I came, I saw, I conquered, said Julius Caesar some 2,000 years ago when Britain became part of the Roman Empire. Back then, Britain was not William Blake's green and pleasant land, but rather it was barren. Britain was cold and wet and blanketed with a green leaf canopy from oak, alder, hazel and birch trees. Its inhabitants, the Iron Age Britons, drew from that land all the resources they needed to live. They used iron for ploughs, timber for shelter, and sheep's wool for clothes. The Iron Age Britons didn't live close to nature, they were a part of it. This documentary aims to answer the question, who were the Iron Age Britons and what was their way of life? First, we'll look at what preoccupied their lives, day in and day out: agriculture. The Book of Psalms, chapter 104, verse 14 reads, "You cause the grass to grow for the cattle, and plants for people to use to bring forth food from the earth." These words were meant for a society whose livelihood and means of living were not too dissimilar from the one found in Iron Age Britain. Like the Israelites of the Old Testament, the British relied on agriculture and animal husbandry to be fundamental to their way of life. Where I am standing now is the site of a prehistoric field system that once belonged to the ancient Britons. Barthampton Down, as it is now called, is a limestone plateau sitting some 204 metres above sea level, opposite the city of Bath. From its top, Barthampton Down offers panoramic views of the surrounding landscape, and at its foot lies the River Avon, whose meandering waterways lead to the great monument of Stonehenge. On the 15th of July 1924, two pilots from the RAF, Osbert Guy Crawford and Alexander Killer, conducted an aerial photography mission over Barthampton Down. Their photograph revealed an enormous grid system, whose high banks and ridges were dramatically highlighted by dark shadows cast from the setting sun. These two pilots wrote about Barthampton Down in their book titled Wessex from the Air, stating it was one of the most interesting sites photographed. Upon further investigation, both of the pilots reached a conclusion. First, they said there was a field system, followed by a pre-Roman camp, and then recultivated back into a field system. Their conclusion, albeit brief, actually fits with archaeological excavations from as early as 1822 by the vicar, Reverend John Skinner. As a field system, the limestone plateau meant Barthampton Down was not prone to flooding, since limestone is a porous rock. This made agriculture well suited here, where crops such as wheat and barley were likely grown, later replaced by the tastier spelt wheat, somewhere towards the end of the Iron Age. Alongside crops, there was livestock too, evidenced by the numerous corner entrances shown by the gaps in field boundaries. This made it easier to drive animals in and out, a feature recognised by the farmer and archaeologist Francis Pryor. Livestock consisted mainly of cattle, pigs and sheep, particularly Sowie sheep, a very ancient breed known for their fine fleece, delicious lean meat and poor flocking habits. Barthampton Down is not an anomaly, for field systems in Sussex and Salisbury Plain attest to using combined farming methods involving both crops and livestock. For the ancient Britons, this was a hard but precious way of life. It was the agrarian way of life, but in order for them to keep it, they needed to defend it. "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is rightwise king, born of all England." This famous line from Thomas Malroy's Legends of King Arthur has captured the imaginations of Britons for centuries. Where I am walking now is the possible location of the Battle of Badon, a legendary battle fought between King Arthur and the invading Anglo-Saxons. But many centuries before this, there once stood here an Iron Age fort, bustling with people and activity. Its name derives from the deity Sulis, a local goddess who was worshipped here at the thermal springs in Bath. Even from a distance, this hill humbles its onlookers with its sheer size dominating both the landscape and the sky. This is Salisbury Hill. The period when hill forts were thought to be created dates back to the early Iron Age or possibly even the Bronze Age. In Somerset there is an abundance of hill forts, but why they emerged is the subject of much debate. Perhaps they were a response to the looming threat of foreign invasion, or maybe there was considerable rivalry between local tribes in the area. The archaeologist Barry Cunliffe reckons that population changes gave rise to the hill forts, particularly as food and resources became strained. Hill forts were natural points of defence. Their elevated height and steep sloping banks was their first layer of protection from any incoming invaders. Like most hill forts, Salisbury Hills, near 200 metres above sea level, gives it a 365-degree view of the surrounding area. What is so special about Salisbury Hill is its triangular shape, enclosed by a 6-metre wide rampart with dry stone walls on either side, the remnants of which can still be seen here today. Hill forts were not merely just for defence, they were places of social cohesion as well, where ancient Britons lived amongst one another. Between 500 and 100 BC, when Salisbury Hill was occupied, there were up to 30 huts here at any one time. What became of these huts and its people is a mystery, but in all likelihood they were abandoned rather than conquered. But who exactly were these people, and to what communities did they belong? To answer these questions, we must look beneath the Earth's surface. People's communities were their tribes, headed by a chieftain. Tribal coins unearthed in areas of southwestern England reveal the territories once belonging to the Iron Age tribes. Here in North Somerset, it would have been the Dobunny tribe, whose most southern border followed the River Brue. South of the river was the neighbouring Juro tribes, who occupied central Somerset in what is now Taunton as well as all of modern Dorset. Unfortunately, since Iron Age people did not write anything down, archaeologists have to use artefacts to reconstruct their lives. Our knowledge of the Iron Age Britons and their tribes will always be limited. Historians will never know for certain how the Juro tribes and Dobunny tribes interacted, but many sensible suggestions have been made based on excavations. Initially, when these tribes were settling into their lands, there may have been some hostilities or border clashes. Warriors would likely have used weapons made from iron, particularly towards the end of the Iron Age, when bronze was fully replaced by iron. In times of peace, however, the two tribes would have traded with one another, exchanging commodities and handmade goods like pottery. This is evidenced by the dispersal of each tribe's coins throughout the other's lands. The village of Mere in central Somerset was probably a market town, where tradesmen from each tribe vied and jostled to sell their merchandise. Why Mere became a market town is simple. It was on the River Brue, a natural border between the two tribes. As time marched on, the tribes of Iron Age Britain came to an end. So too did their people, but their bodies lie preserved across the country in what are known as barrows. From birth to death, from the cradle to the grave, the life cycle is the one constant we share with the ancient Britons. Back then, as it is now, the swing of death's scythe was remorseless. But how the ancient Britons approached death was far different from today. They constructed barrows, large burial mounds ubiquitous throughout the countryside, typically built over the cremated remains of one or more individuals. There are about 40,000 barrows in England and Wales, some 460 in northeast Somerset, and 7 to 10 known barrows back at Barthampton Down. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes, sometimes grouped together, other times alone. The Somerset barrows contain items such as daggers, jewellery and pottery, including the famous sun disk artefact found in Lansdowne and now held at the British Museum. The objects you were buried with determined what you possessed in the afterlife. I am sitting beside one such barrow now, specifically a long barrow at Stony Littleton, 8 miles south of Bath. Now I am inside the barrow, whose ceiling is only 4 feet from the floor. It's an eerie experience, for you feel you are intruding on hallowed ground. But it is also a solemn experience too, for when this barrow was excavated in 1816, fragments of bone were found, belonging to men, women and children. There are 7 burial chambers in here, all connected by a central straight passageway running from the barrow's entrance to its end. The exterior of the barrow is protected by a dry stone wall, but in here the chamber's walls are made of thick stone slabs. The importance of this barrow was not limited only to burial processions. It probably served as a monument too, that demarcated the landscape for local tribes. The Iron Age was a time when ideas travelled and beliefs were inherited from ancestors. From 800 BC onwards, Iron Age Britons became aware of their place, not only on Earth, but in the universe. They conceived a whole new concept of existence that was borderline celestial. The great barrows and cremation rituals intended not to send spirits down into the earth, but up into the sky. They birthed an idea that endures to this day, that somewhere up there was heaven.